Ladies and gentlemen, the youth of this great nation, good morning. It's with profound pleasure that I welcome you to this session for us to begin to have an engagement that we take a moment to reflect on what has been and what we have achieved, but more importantly for us to be able to plan together, to begin to genuinely hold our hands together, to be able to come forward with interventions and programs that will not only help us in terms of deepening the achievements that we've had, but will indeed be able to help us in expanding the scope of the interventions that we plan to work with our youth to be able to make a difference in the Kenyan economy. Just by way of setting up the background for this meeting, for this summit, we call it, is that the importance of the youth of this country cannot be gainsaid, given that we have upwards of 36% of the country's population being within the youth bracket. Importantly, is also to be able to have a determination that this number, well-nurtured, well-catered in terms of the interventions and participation in the well-being of this country, would translate in us gaining a demographic bonus that would not only make a difference in the social but political and also economic well-being of this country. Yes, it is commonplace that we all talk about the huge challenge of youth unemployment rate currently standing at 25%, made worse by the fact that of this 25% unemployed youth, up to 90% of the youth in this category do not possess requisite skills for what the job market is looking for. But having said that, we have a great opportunity in turning the innovation spirit, the spirit of commitment, the creative, the ambition, and the limitless energy around the youth for us to be able to turn this script from what it is now to a positive script for this country, but also the region and the globe at large. This is epitomized by what we have witnessed as Kenya by way of our very own, not being top in Kenya only, but also in the world, the likes of the Lupita in her youth, the likes of the sportsman Iago Julius, the innovators such as Evans, app developer, world-renowned Anthony Mwangi, and many, many more, most of who are represented or are indeed sitting with us here. The government is clear in terms of its vision around the youth, a vision, and I want to quote His Excellency the President of this Republic, that the youth are our strength, our wealth, and drivers of innovation in Kenya. This is what the government believes and stands for. And it's in this spirit that the government has indeed committed to equip and empower the youth of Kenya so that they can realize their full potential. This is synchronized and aligned to our Vision 2030, importantly also within the SDG just adopted last year. In terms of equipping our youth, the intention of government and what we have been about since the current administration took office was to ensure that the youth get affordable, high quality, but also relevant training and skills development through capacity building that would make our youth competitive players in the national and world labor ecosystem. In respect of empowerment, the government has been busy initiating programs and interventions, including the affirmative funds, and most recently the access to government procurement opportunity, as well as having a rollout of the youth empowerment program currently spearheaded by the National Youth Service for youth to be employed in intensive labor public works. We have also been busy facilitating and inculcating an entrepreneurial culture through training, mindset change, as well as forming the youth who would otherwise not have an opportunity to participate in the economy, being organized in circles that would then enable them to access resources, but also venture into enterprise. We call this the dawn of the youth economy. In terms of involving our youth, the government has been busy supporting the youth to ensure that the young people are part of the decision-making around the table, and I'm very happy today to see that some of our youngest decision makers at the national level but also county level are present with us today. But what has been achieved, one would pose. In respect of the sphere of equipping our youth, I'm happy to note that to date we have upwards of 37,000 young people having been recruited and at various stages of training through the NYS system. These have been equipped with skills from leadership, vocational training, discipline, but also self-reliance, which is an important fact as we move them to either to become entrepreneurs or as we move them to the job market. Of these, I'm happy to note, of the 37,000 plus young people, 12,000 of them have been admitted to diploma programs within the TVET institutions. But going forward, we do anticipate these young men and women will continue to be instrumental in inculcating discipline, self-awareness, patriotism across the country through a program where we have the young men and women, once they pass out from their training in Gilgil, they are attached to various youths in the communities. The ratio goes 1 to 5. 1 serviceman or woman attached to 5 community youths, and therefore you are able to see the multiplier effect in terms of the numbers. I'm also happy to note that government has implemented a Kenya Youth Empowerment Program jointly with KEPSA, and through this partnership we saw close to 20,000 youth being availed an opportunity for workplace experience, and out of these 70% of these 20,000 youth were able to be employed, and the balance went for further studies. We are outscaling this program going forward, and we are in the process of readying ourselves to serve another 280,000 young men and women through this program under what we call now the Kenya Youth Empowerment Opportunities Project. Happy to note also 25,000 youth have been absorbed in 25,000 youth have been absorbed within the SGR project alone. But perhaps more important for me is to note that we have thousands of youth who have been taken up in the agriculture sector, that have been taken up within the ICT ecosystem, that have been taken up within the SME, the artisanal, and the Juakali sector, and for which, as I've been speaking with my colleagues, time has come for us to set up now a system for us to have proper statistics that can be shared with all of us. I think I'm just trying to emphasize the point that a lot has been done, a lot has been achieved, but I'm under no illusion that a lot is yet to be done, and I think that's important as we converge here today to, to speak with each other. Let me also indicate, in terms of deepening partnership with the private sector, we have, together with banks, housing finance, KCB, who are present here today, McKinsey, under the Generation Initiative, CAP, Youth Empowerment Initiative, others present here today, BIDCO Contract, Toyota Foundation, and numerous others who have initiatives at the corporate level, also touched many youths across the country. With the McKinsey Generation Initiative alone, we've started off with a pilot of 1,500 graduates out of which 98% have actually received job offers beyond the training. The target under this program is to move to 50,000. Under the KCB to Jiajiri initiative, we've piloted with 2,300 graduates currently receiving business support. The target here is to grow this to 50,000. Under CAP Youth Empowerment Initiative, 9,000 youth have been served, 84% of who are earning a decent living, with a target of 60,000. Whereas the latest year with BIDCO, which came afloat only 2 weeks ago, we have about 2,000 youth and 1,000 women working with BIDCO, and out of this, a target of 50,000 over the next 5 years. Under the Kenya Toyota Foundation, we have gotten in capacity building jointly with Uwezo, the fund beneficiaries out of Uwezo, for improved profitability of the enterprises. Again, the figures here are going to be in the range of the 50,000. Ladies and gentlemen, again, the famed affirmative funds, and here I'm talking about the Uwezo Fund, the Youth Development Fund. I'm also talking about the Women Enterprise Development Fund. We have served upwards of 25 billion shillings and having reached over 3 million people. Under the access to government procurement opportunity, 30% preference reserved for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. We have served upwards of 30,000 in tenders with an uptake of 40 billion shillings. This represents round about 10% of the target set, and like I did indicate, under no illusion, we need to work hard to go beyond the 30% mark. But importantly for me, again, coming back to the very, very vulnerable and at-risk youth who go through the National Youth Service Youth Empowerment Program, we have served 76,000 youth, most of them very, very exposed to drugs, substance abuse, exposed to, if you will, crime, meting out insecurity in the places where they live. And I'm very excited to note this group together has been served with earnings totaling upwards of 5.4 billion shillings, and together they have saved 1.4 billion shillings, which is stacked in 300 circles that have been registered to date. We continue to empower these youth by way of training, capacity building, by way of helping them turn the page in terms of inculcating a culture that they can be the business persons, with a slogan that they need to move themselves from earners of wages to owners of capital. And indeed, that is beginning to happen. You need to come along with me when we visit these young men and women in the informal areas especially, or in the deep rural areas where we are in the 74 constituencies, to be able to appreciate that little effort can really make a difference in the lives of these very vulnerable at-risk youth, where they have dreams. One more time, they see a chance has been given to them, and that they are in a position to be able to now not only just earn what they live on, but to be able to also save and be able to invest and employ fellow colleagues. We will be expanding this very worthy program, and we'll be going to additional constituencies anytime in the future. But we are in the process of winding down, training the circles and the leadership, so that we can have a sustainable business model, even as we ready ourselves to move into the new areas of intervention. Coming back now to our latest service delivery system through the Huduma centers. We are in 36 constituencies with 40 Huduma centers. Out of this, we have upwards of 45 government services being delivered through the Huduma centers, but what is most exciting around this is the level of citizen satisfaction and the feedback that we continue to get, which is rated at around 95%. Important to note, and in respect of today's conversation, is that we have deployed youth-specific services to be given through the Huduma service centers, and this ranges from issues of business name search and registration, issues of registration of self-help groups where most of the youth would converge for them to access the affirmative funds. We also have issues of KRA, PIN and tax compliance certificates being served at the Huduma centers, and as well as ID services, among others. Important to note is the turnaround time within the Huduma centers, and equally important is the fact that we have reserved business through the cyber cafes that we open in each Huduma center for the youth only. And again, moving around to the Huduma centers, the youth who have been lucky to be the ones serving us through the cyber cafes in these centers, they have very, very good stories to tell. One indicates to me that he's able to turn around 5 million shillings in a month from a hopeless situation that he was not employed within the cyber cafe. So again, another business avenue that as we continue to establish more centers, as we continue to go to the sub-county and the ward level, we can see more business opportunities going to our youth. I now wish to turn to a different issue here, and I want us to be able to have a conversation around the figures of people that have been employed. Whereas I may not come specific on the figure of who has been employed, I just wish to indicate that other than the SGR project, we have within the motor vehicle and motorcycle repairs, with so many of the tuk-tuks and the vehicles that Kenyans are still being blessed to bring in, a lot of the youth being employed in the repair work. We have a lot of them also moving in to the retail subsector, where we have subcontracts moving or off-taking products from agriculture onto the retail system. We also have, and we'll be delving a little more here, upwards of 40,000 youth who are employed directly, have employed themselves directly on online jobs that is within the ICT ecosystem. We are intent, together with the Ministry responsible for ICT, to grow this number, to double that in the next 3 months, and beyond that, to be able to move to targets beyond the 250,000 mark in the next 7-8 months. We also, following the conversations we've had, we've already talked about agriculture here and the role of youth in agriculture, and again, there are specific interventions that are being brought through in that sector. But just an example of what we have, even in the irrigation schemes, where we have engaged several of our youth there. Between my ministry and that's responsible for labor, we will be putting up a labor MIS, where we should be able to have concrete figures of what's happening in every corner, and that we'll be able to have a database that shows who is sitting where in terms of a skill set that is for our youth, and who in terms of the employers is looking for what skills, and it should become easier for us then to do the matching moving forward. I want to turn now to the issue of Involve, and we do have an elaborate structure that is through the NYC, the National Youth Council structure, that we are able to continuously maintain engagement from the headquarters, but also at the grassroots. I'm happy to know that we have maintained continuous consultation with our youth across the country through the technical level consultations. I am frequently out of office a lot of the time engaging with the youth, either through the affirmative funds or through the access to government procurement opportunities conversations, but also just speaking to the youth in terms of their role in terms of participation in the economy, political, social, and also economic. But important to note as well is that we have also, in the recent past, put together a youth sector working group that brings together all partners, including the youth and the youth-serving organizations. These would be able to help us in terms of prosecuting the issues that confront the youth, but also involving them in the participation. Needless to say, it is within the Constitution that any policy or legal issue being implemented enjoys sufficient participation, and this has been the case with our youth whenever we have a youth agenda. Before us, we have just put together what we call the National Youth Empowerment Strategy. In here, we had the youth being consulted and bringing in their views in terms of the focus areas that we need to busy ourselves in moving forward. Important as well, we have benefited by having one of the largest youth dialogues that was of a national magnitude in 2014. We have since started cascading this to the regions, starting with a dialogue that we had for the coastal region in January, with none other than His Excellency the President being the host. We do intend to carry on with this conversation because they are important in helping us and also giving us the feedback in what we are doing right and what we need to be able to improve. The youth keep on saying to me, it's no longer the space for us to decide what's good for them. We must make this decision together, and we are living up to that spirit. We continue to also encourage and facilitate our youth in having voice in international conversations, the latest being the UNCTAD, where we had a youth sector and conversations which we participated in, I think, good discourse. We also did have side events touching on youth issues and good resolutions communique brought back to government from the TCAD. We also were privileged to have within the United Nations General Assembly the youth speaking to us, and I was joined by the youth from Kenya, and the story goes and on and on. I think just demonstrating that as government we are aware and we are keen to facilitate and support our youth have voice in not just the national conversations but also international conversations. It's important for me to note that we've also established a framework around the Great Lakes region, where we have in my ministry the Youth Secretariat, which will shortly be progressing on to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where it is going to be permanently housed. Finally, to note that we continue to collaborate with the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association, and they will be having voice this morning. Moving forward, my thoughts about deepening the conversation, having given the background I have, is that we are in the process of reviewing the National Youth Policy, which is somewhat out of date, so that we are able to bring in the conversations that I will be picking from your conversation, in addition to what else we have been hearing from the youth, so that then again we have the youth indeed driving the youth agenda for this country. We will be focusing also on implementation of the National Youth Empowerment Strategy, whose special emphasis runs from issues of youth and leadership participation, skills development and employment, as well as talent identification and development of ICT products that I just talked about, especially the online jobs. We will be focusing within this strategy on implementation of environmental management and sustainable development aspects. We'll also be focusing ourselves on health. We'll also be focusing ourselves on issues of crime and security, and how we can be able to intervene not to have our youth exposed to the extremists. And we'll also be having special focus within this strategy on issues, drugs and substance abuse. It's my desire to see us deepen the public-private partnership so that we can have better, broader, deeper impact as we continue to work with our youth. Important as well, we will be again focusing on issues of skill development, including the technical and vocational education training, and we've already opened up conversations with colleagues in Ministry of Education, and this again will be deepened as we continue to implement. Important again for us to be able to have a situation where we encourage and have a conversation with the youth that even as we exercise the democracy that the Constitution grants us, that we need to be able to do this with the full knowledge of the fact that responsibility goes with accountability, so that then we move away from situations where we would have our youth being exposed because of being in vulnerable positions or situations. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, as I come to conclusion, to indicate that the government is fully committed to serving the youth of this country, because we do realize of the great potential that they have, but we are also very lucky to have recognized as a government, as a ministry, that investing in youth is not just right, but is a smart thing to do, both for the economic returns that this has, but also because of the social capital that we are able to get if we move along with our youth, because of the numbers, but because of the energy, but also because of the commitment, but also because of the genius around the youth of this country. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to wish us a pleasant morning and look forward to very candid conversations so that we are able to improve on what I do view as what have been achieved, for which I'm truly, truly proud, and for the leadership that we have enjoyed from His Excellency the President of this country. I want to thank you.